We're always given static pictures, a structure, a flat plane. But planets journey around our star like fields of music weaving themselves. Every planet is like an atom swirling with its own electrical field of moons, traveling around a sun that's woven around a galaxy, forming the molecules that form the DNA of the galactic existence. To understand who we are, we need to gain some perspective. We need to look deeper, down in through the threads of a hair, through the structures of a cell, all the way down to the core, to the limit of what we have truly come to understand. Beneath the keratin, down into the atom, and all the way through the field of the electron into the nucleus, where we have the protons and the neutrons. We all learn about this in school, but if you study any quantum mechanics, they tell you that the proton is made of 2 up quarks and a down quark, right? And this is how they model that. So you got these 2 up quarks and down quarks, and you've got these force carrier particles, and they can't decide whether to be fields or particles. And this model is interesting because when we actually knock 2 protons together at near the speed of light, this is what we see. And from this gargantuan explosion, this mess of forces and energies and all of that, we tend to see, commonly 2 larger chunks and a smaller chunk. And we say, well, those must be the fundamental units of the proton. Of course. That's indeed it, isn't it? Right? And we do this, and for thousands of years, by the way, there was this thing called the ether, the fundamental field. But of course, the Roman Catholic Church, other Christian churches, they didn't like that so much, because it's like, are you scientists talking about God? If so, that's our domain. You can't talk about that. And so all the scientists are like, all right, how do we get the priests off our back? We got to get rid of this ether. So you come to a point where the ether is removed, science is broken, physics is broken, and 100 years later you've got a guy named Peter Higgs, and he's like, I know, I'll just rebrand the ether and call it the Higgs field. And then I'll call it the God particle, and fortunately in this day and age, if I do that, I'll have everyone behind me. So we recreate the ether through this idea of the Higgs boson, through this field that's always been there from the beginning. My fonts changed when they transferred the file, so forgive this, but David Bohm said once, space is not empty, it is full, a plenum as opposed to a vacuum. It is a ground for the existence of everything, including ourselves. The universe is not separate from this cosmic sea of energy. What we're really dealing with this field is so much more than particles and reverse forces and illusionary antiparticles, and you've got dark matter and dark energy, and nobody understands what any of that is. But really, underneath all of it is one very simple thing: the proton. Did you know that the proton lasts 4 times the lifetime of our universe? In other words, we've never measured that long, so we have no clue how long the proton actually lasts. It is the most sustainable object in the universe. Every proton has existed somehow from the beginning of the universe, as far as we can tell. And the more I began to look at the proton, the more I realized our modeling of it was entirely wrong. That this is actually a curved bundle of space-time around a singularity. My good friend Nassim Haramein said the proton is a black hole. And I say, I think he's correct. But to understand that, you've got to see how space-time curves, how space-time itself could bend from this lattice work of high energy. Did you know in quantum mechanics they say that the theory suggests that in 1 cubic centimeter of space, we should have more energy than we see in the entire visible universe. That's a lot of energy. So how does that all fit? And how does all that stay in a stable state? Buckminster Fuller had that solution, didn't he? Tensegrity, push and pull. So how do you make a curved bundle of space-time? You make a geodesic. Buckminster Fuller's masterwork, wouldn't you say? And how does this lattice of equilibrium curve with a sacred geometry? And what is that sacred geometry? Well, it's the very symbol that we see for earth religions all over the world who talk about the sacred structure of matter, the geometry of fire, air, earth, water, spirit, the pentagram. And this curvature point, as I modeled the proton, I noticed something really interesting about it, because when you start to look at this geometry going down through a structure like a pipeline into the core of every piece of matter that's all around us and in us, I realized that that geometry actually matches the top-down structure of DNA. What if DNA is actually a fractal recursion of the memory system that was built into space-time already? What if life is just another output of this fundamental pattern that when you follow it all the way down to the core, you get this really cool structure? This is called an excavated dodecahedron. How many of you out there are fans of dodecahedrons? Okay, good. Excellent. You get this amazing excavated dodecahedron, and this thing is literally the nexus of the proton. It is the singularity point. It's the space where all the information and energy that's flowing into the proton enters something beyond, something we don't yet understand. So, if protons are the structure of space, and it's all made of these little lattice points in space-time, we can count it, and we can say, we can quantize it, quantum mechanics, and we can say how many quantum bits are in the proton. Because we can think of every one of these little Planck lattice points in space-time as like a bit of energy. Well, the answer is 10 to the 60th, and that's a pretty big number, right? But I happened to be doing some research on the age of the universe around the time that I was working on this physics. And guess how old the universe is in Planck seconds? It turns out the universe is 8 times 10 to the 60th Planck seconds old. So that means there's the same number of memory bits in a proton as there have been Planck seconds in the age of the universe, by a power of 8. Meaning, in other words, every 8 Planck seconds, every proton in the entire universe, including your body and the stage and everything that we're touching and interacting with, is growing. It's remembering. And this is verified from the work of Nassim Haramein and the quantum gravity and the holographic mass. 10 to the 60th is the number of bits in the proton. This gives us a direct correlation. Now, interestingly, there's another link back to DNA, though, because it's 8 times 10 to the 60th. And you know how many types of base codon pairs we have in our DNA? 8. And isn't it interesting that that's also the pattern of the I Ching? And if you look at the I Ching, and you look at the core of the proton, which is 12 sides, you've got 12 sides, they each have 5, you add that together, you get 60, and the I Ching, when you organize it harmonically, looks like this. This is work I did back in 2005-06. So you have these 4 major core points, and this lattice that is unfolding. But get this, it's not just a hard drive. On the surface of that hard drive, there is 10 to the 40th network points. So every single proton is entangled and sharing data with the rest of the universe. There is actually wormhole networks, as John Wheeler would say, linking every proton through the entire universe. And this changes the perspective of everything. This says that we in our bodies are so much more than we've ever conceived of. That the number of atoms in our body, the number of protons in our body, the number of wormhole connections connecting those protons means that in 1 second, your body likely transmits 10 to the 113th data exchanges per second. That's 1 trillion, 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 trillion megabytes per second. Now compare that to the fastest internet access on the entire planet, which is about 26,000 megabytes per second. Do you see? Can you feel it? This is how we directly experience oneness, through the material structure of our body. It means that in 1 proton and 1 pinky, you can connect to all the stars in the entire universe. The power of the universe is in which finger? It was my own finger. And so this teaches us something new about the brain, something new about the energetic system. It shows us that we are, in fact, the living, breathing, unfolding model of the ray of creation. That we are the expression of matter coming into force and field and form. That telepathy is just entanglement. That we are a vibratory field in motion with each other. And we are expressions of the ray of creation, storing information, knowledge, and memory through the process of binary unfolding to the trinary creation and destruction, all the way up to the force of matter, all the way into the nature of emotions, and all the way into the structure of our mind. And then we store that structure of our minds as actions that become literally data that is stored in the fabric of space. So bless you on this journey, my friends, for together, we as these resonant structural creations, we as these beings that can roll up everything back to one true source, are indeed now forming the wave that can change time together. We rise as a consciousness field, becoming aware of our own potential as divine avatars to change the world. So go forth and do so. Blessed be. Thank you so much.